and welcome to the Back of the Nest review show. Following a disappointing display against Wolves last time out, many were predicting a tough game for Palace against a Leeds side who had impressed on their return to the top flight. Never a team to conform to expectations, Palace dominated the game and ran out 4-1 winners with goals from Dan, Eze, Ayew and an own goal from Hyder Costa. Some posh little twat scored for Leeds. On the show today, we have me, Chris Hambling. My name appears to have been changed by the producer Mikey to DR for King. I mean, the way I said DR for King, I mean, it sort of works. I'm fine with it. We also have, fresh from the preview show, Albert Curley.
I wouldn't say fresh, but hello. How are you?
I said fresh, but I am
fresh, probably.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And those looking at the video version will see how fresh Albert is looking.
What's going on underneath? I'll keep that to myself.
Fair. And we've also got Mr. Mike Scott.
Yo.
That is 20% more enthusiastic than he's managed any time pre-show. So we're in for an absolute treat of a show today. So coming up, we'll be looking at the lineup as Hodgson sprung a surprise in his team selection. We'll be looking through the key moments from the game, analysing the goals and the major talking points. We'll be talking about individual player performances, both good and bad. Weren't many in the bad category this time out. I'll be covering your questions and comments as we go. And finally, we'll have a quick chat at the end about the importance of the next 3 games after the international break in defining Palace's season. So before we get going on the specific stuff around the game, just to remind you, we are sponsored by Pitch Sport Football. Google those words, download their app and get involved in predicting lineups, predicting results and rating the team, the manager, the referee and all sorts after the game. It was an absolute joy to put in a positive review of the performance after this week's game. So very, very happy to use it this week for a change. But do get involved in that. On all social media, if you just search for the words Back of the Nest, you'll find us on there. Appreciate it if you can review us 5 stars, please, on your chosen podcast app to help others find our show and grow our fan base. Those of you that are watching this is a redundant comment, but we're also on video. Check out our YouTube channel, which is, I've said YouTube in 2 words there like an old man. Oh, YouTube.
YouTube.
The YouTubes.
They got me on the YouTube, Barbara.
Google it on YouTube. That's a good sentence, isn't it? Anyway, so yeah, head to Back of the Nest on YouTube. YouTube. Oh my God, I'm struggling. What do I do here? Just try one more. I think I'll try one more.
Just carry on.
So check us out on our YouTube channel. That worked better. Where DR's doing a lot of hard work. Like and subscribe to get all of our content on there. So I better, before I make any more mistakes, talk to the gentleman in front of me and see how they've been getting on in general. I'll start with you, Mike. You've written in the show doc here, Computer Games Heaven.
Yeah, well, including for my son as well. Somebody mentioned something called Retro Pi, and I had a look what it was. And it's those little Raspberry Pi machines that the schools use. But somebody's made just an operating system that's like a SNES, a Mega Drive, a Master System, and then loads of other stuff that you never even had anyway, like a Game Gear and stuff like that. Just about every game you can think of, and then just work off the bat. So like Mario Kart, Street Fighter 2. Yeah, like my 4-year-old was playing Streets of Rage on the Mega Drive this morning. All totally free. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I haven't played a new game in about 20 years, but who needs them with this kind of stuff? Absolutely awesome.
That's just great. Live in the past.
Well, I think I'm just going to make a few for people's Christmas presents, and yeah. Basically, you buy one of those little machines for 20 quid, get the image off the internet of the thing, and then a SNES controller that you can buy on eBay for £5. So yeah, absolutely amazing.
All legal. All legal.
It is all legal, yeah, because they're not in copyright anymore. The games, so.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to be honest. I don't understand Raspberry Pi at all. I mean, I know what it basically is. It's a computer. It's what it basically is, but I can't really get my head around how you make it do stuff.
For me, for me, it sounds more like a dubious search term on a private tab.
It probably is that as well. Yeah, it doesn't have a hard drive, so you just put everything on a little SD card, like you get out of a camera, and that's basically it. I mean, they don't do a lot. You tend to use them in like industrial sites and stuff, but for just for just having a little tiny machine that can sit on top of your TV, yeah, all good. All good.
I'm going to do one of two things later on. I'm either going to put that term into a popular site, of which I won't describe, or I'm going to look in YouTube, or I'm going to put that term into Google and find out a bit more about how the computer thing works. I won't tell you which of those two things I'm going to do. Albert, how the hell are you?
Good. I now really want to have a go on Golden Axe 2.
I'll check out Golden Axe 2. I forgot I hadn't looked for Golden Axe. I did have a look for. I was playing Empire Strikes Back, which I know you said that you'd played when you were a kid. So
yeah, completed it, mate.
Completed it.
Of course.
About 30 years ago.
Did you know that the original Golden Axe, that you can complete that game by simply jumping when you're the guy with the axe, because you had three choices, didn't you? But anyway, you can jump and swing the axe continuously, and you will complete the game. That's
fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you got FIFA 96 on there, Mike? Which I think somebody might pull me up on this, was the first FIFA game that had actual players on it, including a Crystal Palace team. I might add.
Yeah. The only games I've looked for football-wise is Sensible Soccer and Super Soccer so far.
Yeah,
anyway, you were telling me how you were, Albert.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, no, all good. I'm all right. It's nice to be out of the clutches of the preview show. I mean, I'm saying that now. I'm sure you could come in with a sly Watford dig at some point, because that's what I'm basically get on the preview show. So,
I mean, between you and me, Albert, I think they've done that joke, really, haven't they? Isn't it? It's time to move on.
I mean, you've said joke. I think you're being generous there.
Yeah,
laboured. Yeah. I think it's laboured.
Yeah, I think you get too hard of a time on there. I don't know why they do that to you.
Never mind. But apart from that, all good. All good.
Good stuff. Well, just before we move on, just a little story from my life with you. It's more of a cautionary tale. So it's my nan's birthday a few months back, and I got her a book. So she likes kind of mystery novels, that type of stuff. So I just searched that, like a caring grandchild, I searched that genre, saw what the bestseller was, read a little bit about it, and thought, yeah, I mean, that sounds fine. And when I gave her the present, she said, "Oh, have you read it?" I said, "No, I haven't, but it's the sort of book I like. I do like the similar genre. So you'll have to let me know how it is." So I went to see my parents just before lockdown, and my nan was down there, and she had the book, and she said it was brilliant. As soon as I finished it, I just had to read it again. And I know you said you hadn't read it, so here it is, and lent to me. So the problem with that is that when you're reading a book that your 88-year-old nan has read that you bought her, and it contains, shall we say, adult content, it feels well. There was quite a lot, so that was unnerving. And then I was talking to a young lady this week explaining this situation. She pointed out to me that not only had I bought that book for my nan and basically enabled her to read filth, my nan had then made the conscious choice to allow me to read such filth. And that possibly reflects on the kind of person she thinks that I am.
Did you say she read it twice?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the pages were well fingered by the time it got to you.
So moving on to the show, it's
just the trouble with secondhand books, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're quite right. It's quite right. They do. Yeah.
That's why I have that rating system on Amazon. Like new, as new, well fingered pages. So.
Yeah, I do just want to say I briefly worked in a library when I was at school, and the Mills and Beans section was very, very heavily used, and I'm sure that I got at least one STI from having to put those back on the shelf. So
I think that's why they come in those plastic covers in the library, from the library, isn't it?
Yep.
Right, so just making a mental note to myself not to go down that road again. So let's have a chat about the game, because of course we've had a a frustrating season at times, but it feels so good to be, doing a podcast talking about a performance that was good, that was the right attitude, the right intensity. And obviously delighted to beat Leeds as well. There've been so much of a Leeds loving, talking about how great it is to have such a big club back in the Premier League. The attention they got even in losing this game. You go to the match of the day coverage, and there was a whole bit about Leeds before they showed the highlights. All the focus was on how hard done by Leeds were with the decision we'll talk about later on. So the fact that Leeds have been getting all this love, it was just so satisfying for us to go out and to smash them. But I think we start as we usually do by talking about the changes that Roy made, and total surprise, total shock. And Mike, I'm going to hand over to you for this one because you picked out the comments, and I know you tweeted them off the back of the Nest account that Hodgson had made in the week. So to all intents and purposes, it was Jeffrey Schlupp starting on the left, and Eze wasn't going to get a look in. But Roy likes to troll, likes to throw a curveball in, and he did.
Yeah, I mean, it got a lot of retweets and comments and people very angry. But essentially, within Hodgson's pre-game statements, when he was asked about why Eze's been used sparingly was the word, he said, Schlupp isn't exactly anything other than a very good attacking left-sided midfield player. I don't know why he put exactly in there, but that sounds like he was angry. So I had to make choices there. I've not been able to fit both in the team together, especially with the form of Andros Townsend on the other side. So to find Eze suddenly in the side, I was shocked, happily shocked, but shocked.
I did a mute thing there, apologies. But I mean, going back to the actual comments, let me grab them, funny enough, that you kindly put them in the show doc for us. He said, It also said he's not been able to fit both in the team together, especially with the form of Andros Townsend on the other side, which obviously we saw play out later in the game when Andros went off and Eze moved over to the right. So all this sort of clamour we've had for Eze starting, and Roy throws that surprise and deserves a lot of credit for doing that, Al. But of course, does it also make you think, well, why didn't that come a bit sooner? Eze had a little bit of a chance before, a little bit of a look in while Schlupp was out, but should perhaps Roy have stuck with him previously?
Yeah, potentially. I think whatever it is, whether it's probably for his defensive qualities, we all know that for some reason Jeffrey Schlupp is more nailed on for a starting place in our 11 than most other players, bar Zaha and Guaita probably. So yeah, we know that Schlupp's a Roy favourite, and fair play to Jeff. He works really hard. He gets back. He does do that defensive side of the game more than most, which again is a big plus for Roy. And every now and then he pops up with a goal, and sometimes they're a bit of a peach as well. So you can see the expectations why people would have thought that it would have been Schlupp. I can't say I was expecting to see Eze start just based on the previous run of games. It's good that he did, and hopefully that gives Roy the confidence to make that change more often. And it might be a case of a week-to-week guessing game of who it's going to be, which makes teams harder. It makes it harder for teams to plan how to play us if they don't know necessarily what they're going to get. So I think it's an end result of Roy saying he didn't have options before. Now he's got them, and I think the more Eze plays, the more he's going to grow, and Roy will feel more confident to start him more often. It's nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a couple of important things in there. You're right. To have that, we bemoan the predictability of a Roy Hodgson selection and a Roy Hodgson tactical setup, but it was changed. Of all the people who are obviously drawing attention to the fact that Roy has been taking a lot of stick recently, and people were kind of saying, well, where are the Roy haters now again, like they did after the Fulham game? And obviously, you got to understand it is just one game, but there were some fantastic things that were changed. Yes, the lineup was a surprise, but I think where you talked about the defensive work, and that's why Schlupp usually gets in. I was really pleased to see that Eze didn't have those defensive shackles. He was expected to get back, but the team kind of shifted around him to get back defensively, and it didn't really have this consistent duty to stay back and go with the fullback. And I think part of that was Leeds' system, but it was very smart as well to give Eze the chance that he deserved. And Roy, again, to his credit, said that Eze earned that opportunity to start in the game, but also not to expect him to spend the entire time defending. And we criticised Roy in the past for negating the kind of flair players and the real talent in the squad, Wilf in particular, of making them do that tracking back and that defensive work. And to see us find a way of not doing that was extremely pleasing.
Well, plus in the post game interview, Hodgson made, and it wasn't asked of him, he made a point himself that he said Eze did absolutely what he was asked for in terms of defensive work. So that's good to know that he thinks that.
Yeah, for sure. That just emphasises that it was a choice to give him that little bit of freedom from the responsibilities to a degree. I'm not saying he didn't defend, because he did get back plenty, but he spent so much more time in the middle of the pitch picking up spaces than he did stuck out on the left following a fullback around, and that to me was really key in this win. The other change was, of course, Luca being suspended. The appeal failed, which I'm not really surprised about, but it was James MacArthur that came back in. McCarthy was fit, but MacArthur took the place, and I think worked really well alongside Jairo Riedewald. So again, probably expected that with Luca being out, so not tremendous amount to talk about there. But so we're going to the first comment we got, which was from Christian Eagle, and he asked, was it our strongest ever bench? And it's hard to argue that, guys, because Batshuayi, Benteke, Butland, Cahill, McCarthy, Sacco, Schlupp, all of them, full internationals, a ton of caps there. Can you think of a better bench than that?
Oh, no, probably not. I mean,
it's a tough ask.
Yeah, especially we're just kind of just throwing the question at you and not allowing you to do any kind of research on it. But it's it does emphasise the strength of the squad, and obviously that, I suppose, the change in there, taking Batshuayi out of the team and putting in Jordan Ayew. I criticised it before the game because in my head there isn't any real question, as much as I love Jordan Ayew for what he did last season, and he ended up scoring in this game. I still consider Batshuayi to be a better striker, so in my head it was an obvious choice. But I know you've done a bit of work we can look at next, Mike. I'm talking just trying to give you enough time to fill up your vape.
Yeah.
But in terms of Jordan Ayew, you've picked out some heat maps of his touches and how he played, so we can get to talking about perhaps the reason for that switch and what does Ayew give you that Batshuayi doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and with a game where there's 5 goals, unless you've basically got a replay of the entire game, which we haven't because of the bloody pay-per-view crap, which obviously we all paid for. The highlights didn't necessarily go into as much detail as I wanted, but it's essentially from watching it in real time, Ayew seemed like he played very much behind at times a front 2 and 3. So I managed to get the heat map off whoscored.com, and he had 47 touches throughout the game, and they are really, really evenly spread out. They're sort of magnetised around the centre circle. And so he plenty of touches in his own half, and barely any in the opposition 18. But it was just good to see that he was, it looked to me as though he was taking up some of the slack that was left by, Eze playing a free role, like you said, instead of Schlupp. So it worked really well. And I mean, assuming we're credit for this, he'd foreseen it and put him in instead of Batshuayi, who, let's be honest, he's much more of a traditional fox in the box style striker. So yeah, it worked really well.
I mean, it's interesting just to see. I mean, I wouldn't have picked out that kind of spread because it's literally the whole pitch that he's pretty much covered. But
he's that good.
When Dio and I, sorry, say again.
He's that good. He's just got the whole pitch
exactly
under control.
But when Dio and I were doing the watch along, and we did at times pick up on the fact that Ayew was defending almost. Well, he was defending in front of the D of our own penalty area. And at the time in the game, it was pretty frustrating because it was at a moment where we'd just got away with the Bamford disallowed goal, and we were being pushed back a little bit. And you're thinking, why on earth is our focal point of our attack, our central striker, if you like, back doing that. But it's only when you look back, as you say, Mike, over the whole game, and you start looking at these things and the heat maps and the positions of players, that you realise that the system was perhaps a bit more complex than that guy's playing up front and that guy's playing left wing and what have you. The kind of movement and interchange of position that we've been crying out for happened in this game. But I mean, Albert, any particular thoughts on what Ayew gives you over Batshuayi?
Yeah, I think Mike's nailed it, really. I think Batshuayi is more of an obvious focal point. And I think Ayew, whilst we're not going to sit here and say he's the most defensive-minded of players, I think what Ayew is very good at, whether it's on the 18-yard line or a bit further up the pitch, if Ayew gets his foot on the ball, he's got that ability of getting 20, 35 yards up the pitch with a dribble, and is capable of playing a pass. And I guess is a bit more of a link-up player throughout the whole of the pitch, whereas Batshuayi tends to be a bit more sort of in and around the 18-yard box. And I guess when we're Leeds are quite they press quite high. They're quite intense in terms of how they try and attack. So I guess we were trying to have as many men behind the ball as we can, to try and sort of get those interceptions and then get ourselves up the pitch, knowing that Wilf and Eze, when we are in possession, are going to be, looking to receive a pass from someone like Ayew. So I think it was it's not something that I would have, I raised an eyebrow when it was Ayew over Batshuayi, because again, Batshuayi's been very close to scoring several goals. So yeah, but I guess Ayew, as the heat map shows, Ayew's a bit more capable of doing work in all areas of the pitch, where Batshuayi is going to be sort of trying to stick and buzz around that 18-yard box.
Yeah, it's interesting some what you were saying there around the sort of soaking up the pressure to a point, but then being able to spring. And I think that's a really important point to consider in that tactical setup, because we knew that we'd have space. It was talked about pre-game, and we knew that we'd be looking to counter-attack. And where we did that well, we did that really well against Man United because they allowed us space. And it was very similar here. But where teams like, the Chelsea game sticks out in my mind as a team that saw what we did against United and just shut it down straight away. And part of the change and why Leeds weren't able to shut it down straight away, as much as it was they get a lot of players forward, it was because we got the gaps between the players were a lot smaller. And it's almost like a coiled spring, just able to completely launch when we needed to go forward. And, that, again, really pleasing to see. And you can't do anything but praise the manager and coaching staff for that, as well as the players for carrying out the instructions the right way. And Mike, I'll let you take us into the next bit as well, because you've picked out another key area of the tactical setup, which I think, again, having read it, spoiler alert, I think you're absolutely right. But take us through it.
I presume you're referring to the fullbacks issue. So Tyreek Mitchell, I think we all are a big fan of. And I think there's arguments and discussions between us about whether we thought PVA would get his place back. And obviously he is, at the moment anyway, far more accomplished going forward. And also Waldy, I mean, I was quite shocked to see he wasn't on the bench. So I assume his injury was worse than originally thought. I don't know if you've got any updates on that afterwards, but I was very happy to see Klein in, because always been a massive fan. And it's took him a couple of games to get his eye in. Definitely still making a few mistakes, but the fact that they were playing at times like wing backs rather than fullbacks added so much to the coiled spring you were just talking about. There was one particular move. Again, I haven't been able to find it on the replays, but there was a lovely overlap between Klein and Townsend that ended up coming to nothing. But it was, I remember talking to Chris Clark after the game about it, one of my favourite moves of the game. And to see that on both sides of the pitch, obviously we know how good PVA was. We've got the stats here. One significant dribble, two aerials, one, decent amount of possession, pass success rate of 77%, which was good because there were some long balls. This is a real extra dimension to the attack that we haven't had. And I think if Klein can continue in the team and improve and become more of a Hodgson-style player, that is a really good sign for the rest of the season.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot in what you've said there. I think seeing our fullbacks being the ones that are pushing forward and giving Leeds problems and stopping them getting attacking. That's kind of the opposite to what we've seen for quite an extended period under Roy Hodgson. Too often it's our attacking players that are following fullbacks and allowing us to be pushed back and us struggling to attack. So we did turn the tables on Leeds in that respect, and definitely PVA made a huge difference in that. But it's weird to say that because of how well Mitchell's done, and it's not like Mitchell hasn't got forward as well. And you think against Wolves, we definitely missed Mitchell. PVA was ineffective there, and Mitchell's passing up and down the left is excellent and probably a level above PVA, but he doesn't have the directness and the confidence really that PVA has, and we really saw the benefit. But I have to focus for me on Klein before I give Albert a chance to comment on this. Yeah, 100%. He's not back to his best or anything like that. But there were moments in that game where you started to see the Nathaniel Klein that was almost impossible to get past. You know, I can remember in his very early days where Sean Scannell suggested he was a robot because you literally couldn't get past him in a one-to-one duel. And, you know, long before he rejoined us, that sort of disappeared from Klein's games because of injuries and lack of match practice. It just wasn't that player anymore. You could kick and run past him, but to see him after 3 straight games building up that match sharpness and seeing him back cutting out crosses, because we talk about how brilliant Joel Ward's been for us over the years, but the one thing he doesn't really do often is cut out a cross. So seeing Nathaniel Klein getting back and doing that, I found it quite inspiring in a lot of ways. It just gave me a lot more confidence in that right back position, and the more games he plays, the better he'll get, and you can see him earning a longer contract.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel, and he had moments yesterday. He's definitely looked rusty, but he's a player that's for whatever reason, whether it's been out on loan or his injury record, he's not played a huge amount of football over the last couple of years. So I'm not expecting him to come in and be the same Nathaniel Klein that left us all those years ago. But it's a bit like, for me yesterday, there was times where I was sort of wincing a little bit, and it was in the early parts of the game really where he looked a bit rusty, but he kind of seemed to be sort of taken over by the spirit of Wan-Bissaka, where if he fluffed his first interaction, somehow he managed to make up for it, just by being having that buzz and going again, and he sort of grew into the game. And I think, like you say, if he plays more, if he becomes more match fit and gets used to a run of games, I think. So, I mean, obviously, it's only good for us, and having the option of at one point it was we were ruined the loss of Klein, and Joel Ward was bigged up as being better than Klein, and that was sort of all meant to make us feel better. I think now we're seeing the fruits of two players that have been on very different journeys that, depending on who we're playing, are both very capable of filling in that right back position and in sort of inspiring confidence, whoever it is really. And they've both got their pros and cons, but on their day, they're both absolutely fantastic right backs.
Yeah, for sure. This chat kind of takes us into a comment from Andy Hode, who's, as I mention every time we talk about Andy, has one of the finest Twitter names ever. He's Andy the Twat 1992. Good stuff. I mean, it's a brave name. It's a very brave name. And he said that Eze, PVA, and Wilf link up superbly. So my only question is, would Mitchell have the same effect? And it's hard to answer that question because I happen to think that Mitchell links extremely well with Wilfried Zaha in a lot of the best work we've done of late, and in particular where Wilf's got a couple of goals. The pass directly to him has been a pass drilled into feet from Tyreek Mitchell. So there's definitely a link up between those two, but we haven't really had much of a luxury of seeing Wilf, Eze, and Mitchell play together for any extended period of time. And there's zero doubt whatsoever that PVA and Wilf in particular have an almost telepathic understanding already. We remember PVA and Wilf doing bits. That was a thing for a while, wasn't it? Went a little quiet for a bit, but that existed. Indeed. And then you can just see Wilf really enjoying playing with someone like Eze, with the level of talent that Eze's got, the vision that he's got, and the confidence that he's got on the ball. There were some lovely little flicks and quick interchanges of play between them. So absolutely agree 100% that the three of them work well. But, I'm in the place where I think Mitchell can do that maybe not quite as direct and as quickly as PVA does, but probably in a different way. And I think the more they played together, the more that link up would work as well.
Yeah, I mean, Mitchell would have looked good with IU supporting him and Eze in front of him in that game as well. There's no question. He hasn't had the opportunity of that kind of creativity in front of him this season. So,
for sure. And just a couple more questions before we start getting into some more specifics about the game itself. And they're really Roy-based questions. So starting with Stephen Bartley, says, are we turning into a Jekyll and Hyde team this season? Or is the tactical agility in the opposition dugout, or lack thereof in Leeds' case, a key factor in deciding our performance on the day? I suppose we'll all have our say on whether we think we're a Jekyll and Hyde team or whether we think we can sustain this. But to kind of address the second part, really, which is about the opposition, absolutely it has an effect. But there's so many different variables that go into whether or not Palace are going to play well. And if you look at what we did against Leeds, I think Leeds haven't really, and it's a criticism I've heard Leeds fans make of Bielsa, which almost seems ridiculous, the idea that he might get stick from their fans for getting them into the Premier League and playing the way that they do. But, they all say he doesn't, you've heard this sentence before. He doesn't have a plan B. He just plays the way he'll play, and it either works or it doesn't. And that's his style. So absolutely, it played into our hands. But I don't think we should really be doing a disservice to the players and the management staff here, because it wasn't just about how Leeds played. It's about how we just played with so much more drive and intensity and ambition. Though it's not much different from the setup against Wolves. Or I suppose Wolves is probably a bad example because we did play with a formation. But you go back to the Chelsea game, go back to the Everton game. There's not that much different in what you're seeing in our setup. It was just the level of intensity for me. So, but it's a really tough question to answer. So, Albert, I guess you first, really. Stephen saying, "Are we a Jekyll and Hyde team?" What's your thoughts?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know if we're Jekyll and Hyde. I think we know what we're going to get most weeks from a Roy team, no matter who the personnel are. Well drilled, try and stay well organised. We're not going to come flying out the blocks and go into the halftime break, 3-4-0 up. And I really, again, I don't want to sit here and take credit away from the performance yesterday, but like you say, Leeds only play one way. They conceded 4 against, Leicester. What was that, Monday night? They come out and they want to score goals, and we're a team that's best playing on the counter attack even at home. So I think there was an element of, I don't know what you want to call it, naivety or like I say, being one dimensional. But I think it definitely favoured us yesterday in that Leeds only play one way, and as long as we get our defensive game right, there's a very, very good chance that we can hurt teams on the break. And as good as Leeds are, and as admirable as their style is, this is the first time they've been back in the Premier League in a long, long time, and essentially a pretty fresh Championship team. So I think it was favourable for us yesterday. Again, that's not to take anything away from the performance, but we could sit here after the international break on the flip side of a result and be like, "Oh, we're back to normal." So, I think it's a fantastic victory, and I really hope it's the touch paper that's lit for us to now say, "No, we're not a Jekyll and Hyde team. This is a system that we're going to play, and we're going to try and rely on that creativity, that fluidity, and that sort of extra bit of quality and flexibility in terms of the squad as a whole, that we can sort of hurt teams a bit more and with confidence."
Yeah, I think that's an overriding thought for me. To me, it proves that we can play that way. Now, I'm not going to go overboard, and I'd encourage other people not to do the same thing as well, because we saw it. There was a lot of told you so, and look at how when we beat Fulham, and Fulham, as much as Leeds are a promoted side, they're a better promoted side than Fulham. We have to concede that, and beating Leeds 4-1 is hugely impressive. But we've still beaten a promoted side. It's something that a team as established as us should be expecting to do, albeit perhaps not as impressively as that. But it's very important we keep our feet on the ground, and every game will be different. It'll have a different set of challenges. What I want to see is us able to realise that we've got it wrong and change it during the game and do something better. And this game did give us a chance to see that, because we got it right from minute one. So huge praise for getting it right from minute one. But really, it's not the source of any of my concerns. We've seen that. I think it goes back 15, probably 16 games now, where we've gone ahead, we've not lost a game. So that tells you everything you need to know about how, where our strengths lie. And it also points the direction as to where our weaknesses lie. And our weaknesses lie in being able to recognise that things aren't going to plan and we need to act to change it. And that's where we see very little action from the bench, very little action on the pitch in terms of trying to get a foothold back in the game where our plan hasn't worked. So that's how I'd sum up Stephen's comment. And Mike, I'll let you take Andy's question rather than go any more on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Andy's on a similar theme said, what do you think prompted Roy to change the way we played, not just from Wolves, but from the last few games, abandon the total defensive mindset against one of the league's more attacking teams, in brackets successfully? So I'm going to go to the answer that Eze gave Chris Grierson on the website for post-match interview. Because Chris Grierson said, "What do you think was different? Why was it so effective?" And Eze said, "We didn't sit back after we went 1-0 up and soak up pressure. Now, whether that was deliberate from Hodgson or not, they didn't do it. And I think that was the key difference. Leeds, yes, they clearly do give you a lot of space, and it was brought up by Eze, it was brought up by Hodgson. They're the only two post matches that have been put on the site, but they both said that they marked man to man. They gave an enormous amount of space, and it meant that quick counter-attacking football was easy to do. The problem is that arguably the other 18 sides in the league, or certainly 16 of them, don't allow that. So, and the other thing is, it's pretty obvious to work out what to not do to give Palace a hard day at the office. So, respect to Leeds for trying, but they've just come up from the Championship where that kind of thing often does work a lot better. You think back to Fulham the first day of the season 2 seasons ago, Palace schooled them in how to just take your chances, be clinical on the break, 2-0 win. And it reminded me of that. And I don't usually bet on Palace before a game. I usually bet on the other team just so that it makes me feel slightly better when I get some money out of it. But I just did not see us not getting at least a point, if not 3, against Leeds, because they would just leave a load of spaces. So I'm hoping that Hodgson will carry on doing that against other teams as well, but who knows?
Definitely. I say, for me, there's a lesson to learn there in trusting the players to go and do that kind of thing. Trusting the players to get forward. And for once, and there's a little bit of analysis of Match of the Day that showed it, and I remember from watching the game with DR seeing it a few times, that when we were breaking, there were multiple players running into the penalty area. It's so often we see a player get down the left or down the right, look up, and he's got two options. There's a single player in the box or the player that's running behind him, and that's really all we've got. And at our absolute worst, that's how we play for 90 minutes. But when we gamble and we take some risks, it just feels that much better.
We had so many people in the box. I think it was really early on chance. Was it there was a ball got played across to Ayew, and instead of hitting it, he let it go past him to Townsend, who was in arguably a worse position. But I mean, when was the last time you saw a player in the box, a Palace player in the box, receive a ball and have the confidence to dummy it, knowing there was somebody else behind him? I mean, I can't remember that for a long old time.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I remember that well, because you're thinking absolutely right that there's a better chance for Ayew to hit it first time, and that's exactly what Townsend should have done, because he actually lands on his left foot, but for some reason he wanted to take control of it. Perhaps he was as surprised as anybody to get the opportunity. But
I've got a quick question for listeners as well. When was the last time we scored 2 goals that both hit the underside of the bar when they went in a game?
Are we waiting for them to answer?
I just wondered if anyone messages in that's got an amazing memory. But yeah, 2 goals in a row as well, both hit the underside of the bar.
I can't remember any goal that hit the underside of the bar.
Oh dear. Anyway, let's get into some more specifics around the game. I've got a question to ask of you both, really, rather than to give my full summary. Obviously, we've talked a lot already about the fact it was a strong performance, and the reasons we felt that tactically it worked out. But Albert, for you, is 4-1 justified? Was it a 4-1 game? Bielsa didn't seem to think so.
No, I didn't think it was either. One of the dads in my eldest's class is a Leeds fan, and I messaged him and said, "Bit harsh the scoreline." I think I haven't scrolled that far ahead in the show plan. Apologies, but the VAR decision obviously is. I'm sure we're going to go into that in more detail. I mean, I was absolutely jaw on the floor when that got ruled out. Again, not going to say I was upset about it, but it was a huge surprise. The own goal is such an act. The more you see it, you think, how's that? That's like a world-class long pot on a snooker table. Like, it's an absolute 1 in a million own goal. So you factor those things. I don't know, goals change games. It doesn't mean that the game would have finished 3-2 necessarily, but it's those fine margins that can flatter the scoreline. I think we deserve to win. I'm not saying we didn't, but I think we deserved it based on the fact that we tried to do something different, and we did sort of load our team with our more naturally sort of more attacking players. But yeah, I think 4-1 was ever so slightly flattering.
I think that's fair. I have to say, you talk about your mate. Did you say your mate or your mate's dad or something? I've got confused between what I'm about to say and what you said.
Son's mate's dad.
Who
is a friend?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, we've cleared that up, and that was the most important part of what I was about
moving
to say.
on.
Moving on.
Should we just end the show there?
Yeah, probably. That's what everyone wanted, right?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Carl Savage, who messaged us yesterday, showing a video clip of a very, very unhappy father who was a Leeds fan, as Carl himself celebrated like only a very drunk Palace fan could celebrate. And really enjoyed that, Carl, and I promised I'd give you a shout out. So there it was. So good stuff. But there was a lot of bitterness from Leeds fans, and there still was this morning, which it's beautiful. You love bitter opposition fans. It just gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling when you see how unhappy they are. But I was surprised at the level of bitterness. There was a lot of focus on the VAR decision, and I suppose they're not as used to it as we are in terms of the absolute insanity of the rules, making it a whole pointless task. But it's always relevant to talk about how badly we've been affected by it this season already, and for a lot of last season. We benefited at times, we lost at times, and I suppose it's easier for us to take that kind of view. But absolutely, we'd have been extremely upset about that. But they were talking about things like, we'll get into it for the second goal actually, but they were talking about all sorts of incidents in the game that to their perception made us extremely lucky to beat them. But on the balance of play, they can't be upset that we won that game. I just can't see it. There was nothing in that game to suggest that they were better than us and that they deserved any more than they got. Scoreline, absolutely, I can accept that's harsh. Lucky for the third goal for sure, and lucky to not concede an extra one. But other than that, and you think about the whole of the second half, they didn't trouble us at all, did they? That was the 45 minutes for them to really push us back, put us under pressure, and force that goal, because we do buckle when we put under pressure continuously. You can force our team back, and they just completely failed to do that. So I was really surprised that they were just as angry as they were about it, because it's a game they deserve nothing from and got nothing from. But I want to get into the first goal before I go any further. But I just wondered if you had any general comments, Mike, about the performance that we haven't quite covered yet. You can say no.
I just want to say on the fans being angry thing, it's almost like tribalistic angry people exist on Twitter for every team. On
any topic, doesn't have to be football.
Yeah. I really think that it goes back to the last comment we were just discussing. Leeds were naive in their approach, and it was flattering, but we had a higher expected goals, we had less possession, we had more shots. more shots on target. I mean, I don't know what they're expecting. They've shipped 8 in 2 games. Something's got to change for them, but that's not Palace fans' job to analyse that, is it? So.
No, for sure. And there was one Wolves fan who got in touch on our YouTube channel who was extremely angry because he expected Roy Hodgson to come out and criticise VAR after the Leeds game as well, because he criticised it after Wolves beat us. And I found that fascinating that a Wolves fan would take time out of his day to come after our manager for that particular reason. But
no, have you been to Wolverhampton?
Actually, no, fair enough. Yeah, no, I see it. Anyway, just to quickly run you through the first goal, and then we'll get talking about the VAR decision itself. So goal 1 for Palace, Ayew and Zaha were combining well, and the latter forces a corner. And Eze steps up to take it in, curls it in from the left-hand side, right-footed. Scott Dan has actually worked really hard to get some space in the box, goes between 2 defenders, kind of heads it into the corner off the underside of the bar. So there's a couple of things I want to pick out from that. First of all, set-piece delivery. And obviously we know what happens later on with a different kind of set-piece. But, I talked about this with DR in the watch-along during the game. And it was one of the reasons we went after Eze is because of set-piece delivery. No one could have failed to see us struggle to deliver a corner on a consistent basis or deliver a free kick from wide areas in particular on a consistent basis and threaten the goal. Eze's quality makes such a difference there. And poor Scott Dann hadn't scored a goal since December 2017. All of a sudden, he'd got Eze taking a corner, and there it goes. So, but set-piece delivery, gents, I've got to hand that over to you. I haven't picked one of you either, so you're just going to have to fight it out amongst yourselves.
Cool. Can we add in the audio of that Doc Brown track that says we're going to kick him with Connor Wickham, and if not, man, we got Scott Dan. Let's just add that in, and that we don't need to talk about it anymore. Amazing.
Was it Dan's goal, Albert? Was it?
Yeah, of course it was.
So,
he was trying to head it in the goal. It ended up in the goal, and I'm pretty sure that's what it says in the rule book.
Yeah,
in the football rule, in the rules of football book. I'll look that up on YouTube later. Yeah, of course it was his goal. Scott Dan, fuck's sake.
Yeah, fair. I'm going to be really generous and say that it doesn't look great from one particular camera angle, but if you look at where his head is and where he's looking to head the ball, it seems odd that the ball would have come off the defender's head and gone that direction.
That's doing them with the eyes, isn't it? It's like send a penalty the other way.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
You're definitely saying the scoreline's flattering then if you're saying Scott Dan didn't mean that goal. The own goal was a freak. And they should have had one as per VAR.
No, Scott Dan all the way knew exactly what he was doing, and quite rightfully that was his goal. Let's talk the disallowed goal for that little rat Bamford. So Palace. So this was something you talked about Eze's comments, Mike, where he said we didn't drop back after scoring a goal and try and soak up pressure. But I laughed when you said that because we absolutely did do that twice. Until we learnt our lesson, and this was the first example of that, which we ended up getting away with. So we did start to drift back. There was 2 lines of 4 back, really sort of on our third, and even Jordan Ayew would come right back as well. And there's just very little in terms of way of getting out. So we invited a bit of pressure, and unfortunately, it's very similar to the way Wolves took us apart a little bit. We don't tend to move too much when the front players are kind of exchanging positions. The defence, quite understandably, it's a way of doing it. You pass a player on to another player, but the movement was unfortunately pretty good for this disallowed goal, and ended up with Klich receiving the ball in space.
Nicely done.
No worries, mate. I was proud of that, as you could tell from my little smile. I keep forgetting we're on video and people can see my smugness. Need to dial that down. Anyway, so he got a bit of space in front of him. No one came out to meet him, so he was able to pick a pass for Patrick Bamford, who he signalled for the pass, didn't he? Put his arm out to signal for the pass. Very smart that. Enjoy it there. So And it was a good finish with his weaker foot, which was hard to see. But sadly for the little tiny weasel, his arm was actually judged offside. And what I've put here in a decision that was extremely funny, because it really quite was.
VA ha ha ha.
Indeed.
I mean, I know you said your jaw hit the floor. We've seen enough of this now. The first replay I saw, I was like, this is going to be disallowed. Like he came out after the game and said, I can't believe it. The game's gone. I've seen this happen several times in the past few weeks. It's like, well, you just said you've seen it happen to other people. So fucking learn from it, you dickhead. Like don't come out and then say, oh, it's wrong. You know, like your arm's offside. Like I don't agree with it. If the rule changes and it goes back to that being onside, fine. But by the letter of how it's been done for the last however many months, that's offside. And I can't believe that he's surprised. And he isn't, because he said that he's seen other people get done for it. So, I knew it was going to be ruled out, and it was better. It was better than him not scoring it.
I have to say, I mean, we have to talk about the rule itself, clearly, but we won't spend a tremendous amount of time on it. Because they talk about now it's handball within a sort of T-shirt shape, right? So they're justifying.
That's what slipped my mind yesterday.
Yeah, but I suppose their argument apparently, this was the first time I'd really heard this argument. I'd heard that they'd changed where handball was being given from, but it hadn't really clicked to me that they were also saying you could score using that part of your body from now on. So if you happen to accidentally knock the ball in with your upper arm where your shirt ends, that now apparently counts as a goal, whereas the season before that had been given as handball. So
he's wearing a long sleeve shirt.
Well, this is what I thought. Maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe everyone should be.
I hate to be a pedant.
Do you hate to be a pedant? Nah, nobody does. It's a very enjoyable thing to do. But yeah, the rule is what it is. So if that had happened up the other end, we'd have had a goal disallowed as well. So it's not so dramatically unfair. The problem is it doesn't feel like football, just like the offside decision in general doesn't feel like football. When you see a player's feet behind the defender and he's leaning and he's getting given offside for leaning, you're like, that doesn't feel like it should be offside. And that's where the anger and the frustration comes from, and that's where the kind of common sense part has gone out of the game. But we can't pretend it's unfair in the fact that because it would have been consistent if that had happened to us and not them. So just deal with it. And at some point people will revise the rules again. But there you go. And we don't even need to get into the fact that could they really accurately measure when the ball was kicked and where was Bamford's arm at that point? Was it between frames of the camera? All that sort of stuff. It is ridiculous, and it is why not the technology isn't the problem, but the people using it and the degree that you're using it remains the problem.
But you're right. It has that would have been disallowed for any team. There was no inconsistency. So yeah, I mean it's stupid, but it was consistent. So that's how it's going to be for the rest of the season, at the very least.
Offside is offside, as I keep saying to people.
Yeah, and that is a very true statement, very insightful.
Well, no, but it is, isn't it? You got, people are like, there needs to be a bit of there needs to be tolerance. It's like no, because there's always going to, whatever the rule is, there's always going to be. I'm not saying I agree with the offside as it is, just for the record. There's always going to, wherever you draw the line, there's going to be debate as to whether you're on that line or not. So that's why I was surprised yesterday, because I forgot the whole that it's the top of the arm is still technically part of the scoring appendage. What am I trying to say?
Scoring appendage. Yeah,
but it's like if that's a legitimate part of the body that can be offside and it's offside, then it's offside. It's
but more than that, and I really don't want to get into ridiculous long discussions about this, and we have anyway. On Match of the Day, Tim Cahill said, well, how am I going to point to where I want the ball? And it's like, well, as soon as you say that, then your hand is becoming an active part of play, because you're telling the guy where you want the ball. So it is an active part of play. If you didn't have that, if you only had one arm, he wouldn't necessarily know you wanted the ball there. So, like...
Yeah, well, exactly right. I mean, the thing to do, it's a little bit like the keepers coming off their line thing. We can't come off our line by a centimetre. Stand a centimetre further back. Similar to offside. If you're going to be given offside for that, then time your run better. Bottom line. Yeah, 100% doesn't feel like football. Feels that it's wrong, but it, as we said, consistent across the board. Let me rattle through these. We will have to stop and talk about the next goal in a bit more detail, but then I'll rattle through the rest and we can get onto some performance stuff, which we've covered a fair amount of already. And then, looking at how long we've gone already, guys, we'll have to try and wrap this up relatively quickly, won't we? Otherwise, Mike just gets all shirty every time we go over an hour.
I haven't said anything today.
No, I know, but it's in your face already, mate. I can tell. Albert, just before we do move on, and I haven't deliberately done this to annoy you, Mike. You pointed at your camera while making a point earlier. Which one of us were you pointing to when you did that? Or was it just a general camera point?
What the point was.
You said, and I wasn't saying you were like that.
Oh no,
I wasn't.
No, I was just, I think there's a lot of debate about, is VAR the problem or is the rule that VAR is implementing the problem? And I was just stressing that I didn't necessarily agree with the offside rules. It was.
All right, but but is that? I mean, I just want to understand if you were pointing at the viewers. Sorry, can't point at listeners. That's just insane.
Well, there are none.
Oh dear, I better move this on before you destroy any more of our hope and dreams. Goal 2. So there was a bit of weirdness in this one that I want to talk about. So first of all, we got away with it, and with Bamford being given offside, and we actually lifted our game almost straight away from the free kick for the offside, which was nice to see. Not nice that we didn't set into that pattern, and that's where I agree with Eze. But so Riedewald picked the ball up in midfield and found PVA. His first time pass went into Eze, and he was fouled. And the free kick was just breathtaking. 20 yards out to get the ball basically up and down and going off the underside of the bar. That in itself is exceptional. But the pace, the power, and the placement was all just absolutely perfect. I haven't seen a better Palace free kick for a long time. Lucas hit some good free kicks, but you're going back to things like maybe one of Jedi's, maybe even going back as far as it was up with that. It was up with that level of talent and of ability. So I don't really know. I don't know. There's too much more to say on it other than it was amazing, and you guys, I'm sure, would simply agree. But there was a point apparently that happened, and one of the reporters asked Roy Hodgson about it after the game, and he kind of tried to brush it off a little bit. But apparently, some of the Leeds bench or the Leeds director of football were complaining at that second goal because we didn't put the ball out of play for Click, who was down injured.
Yeah, so, I watched that back because I wondered it as well. So he went down after Gyro had turned away with the ball. There's no way that Gyro would have known. So unless the Leeds players alerted him to it and then the referee stopped it, I really, again, it just sounds like it's petulance from Leeds fans to me.
It's idiocy, but it's one of their staff. Apparently, the director of football was adamant. But I went further than that, Mike, in terms of looking at it. So first of all, you're right. It happened after Gyro had turned away, but he just got his studs caught in the turf and fell over. So it's not even like there was a potential challenge or foul to be aware of. And from the moment he hit the deck, I counted 4 seconds until Eze was fouled. So apparently, in that 4 seconds, whilst we're actually playing football and looking forward, we should have noticed a player that had randomly fallen over, tripping over nothing, and stopped the game and kicked the ball out of play.
Fuck off, Leeds.
I'm going to blame the lack of fans in the stadium because that's normally, fans are jeering, and that's what brings the attention to it. So
there you go. I think that's generous, and I think you're right though. Corona's fault. Absolute madness in my view for them to think like that, but it was a brilliant way to go 2-0 up. But I do think we did take our foot off the gas after going 2-0 up, and we did invite them onto us, and the little rat was left alone to score. What was a good goal, we have to be fair. And I suppose the only thing to pick out here was a bit of a tiny little negative in what was a very, very positive game, was that basically all Leeds did was they overloaded their right flank, our left side. And when Bamford moved out to that side, Dan went with him, but he didn't go tight. He stood off, sort of moved his way around the back of two other players. And so Bamford's just, sharp movement away. Dan hasn't had time to get with him. And basically has given up before Bamford's even got the ball, and the header's been won. And then it's just too difficult for Klein to get across in time. So, I'm not necessarily picking out Scott Dan and saying it's all his fault there, but
you are.
It weren't. But I just did, really, didn't I? So I think what I'm getting at really is I think he'll be disappointed with that he maybe didn't get a little bit closer to Bamford. And I think we could say that defensively, we did see a little hangover from what happened against Wolves, where we just weren't close enough to their forward players. We saw a little bit of that in this game. But fortunately, after that moment, it never happened again. So whether we just got in at half time and sorted that out, whether it was just the players themselves noticing they got to get tighter, I'm not sure. But the pleasing thing is we didn't let that happen again. So, but it was disappointing for it to go back to 2-1, and really disappointing to see Bamford scoring goals like that at the Premier League level, because it just adds insult to injury of just how bad he was for us and how arrogant he was when he dismissed Palace and the way we had treated him after he just didn't really try, But there we go. 3-1 was hilarious. It was all about the pass from Wilf, wasn't it, down the flank? No look pass. 40, 50-yard pass down the flank without looking. Exceptional. And that's the sort of stuff he doesn't get enough love for. But PVA tries to hit across, hits Ida Costa. The angle, the fact that happened, and I can't remember who said it. Might have even been Terence on Twitter during the game said you could. It's a ginger guy. I think he does some sort of other show. Don't know. Yeah, don't know the guy, but he said you could do that 1,000 more times and it wouldn't happen again like that. You could probably do it realistically 100,000 more times, it wouldn't happen again. But it did happen, and it was extremely funny. And that got us in a really good place, obviously, going into half-time, 3-1 up. And as I said earlier on, Leeds couldn't do a thing about it in the second half, and that pleased me almost as much as the first half performance, I have to say. Fourth goal was just all about us being resolute defensively and continuing to threaten, continuing to go forward. And they just stood off Wilf. I think they'd kind of lost hope. It was about 70 minutes, I think. And they seemed to have lost hope of getting back into the game properly. Stood off him, but the pass into Ayew, the movement from Ayew, finish, keeper gets a hand to it, nearly keeps it out, goes in off the post. But, that kind of just rammed the thought I had pre-game back in my face in terms of why start Ayew over Batshuayi. So, I guess that's why he's capable of that. So, yeah, like I say, great goal, 4-1. Loads more than that happened in the game, but we've already ran out of time talking about the goals we scored, which I don't think that's happened it's probably since we beat Leicester 5-0.
I mean, I can't remember if I'm dreaming or not, but did we only score 2 at the most in any game last season? That was a stat for a while. I don't know if we ended up scoring 3 in any game, but it was certainly not 4.
It was a very, very long run of games with us not scoring more than 2 goals. You're right. I can't remember if it was the whole season.
I think the last time we scored 4 must have been the Bournemouth 5-3, I think.
Indeed, but brilliant all the same. Obviously delighted about it. So let's pick out any kind of comments we've got around players. And we'll start, lots of people quite rightly focusing on Eberechi Eze. Mr. Cadbury's Parrot said, I didn't see the match due to PPV. How was Eze's defending? We have addressed that already. Realistically, he wasn't asked to do a huge amount, but what he was asked to do, he did well. Good positioning and all that kind of stuff. Again, a theme we've covered already from Johnny Thatch, which talks about how slick did Wilf and Ebbs look together. At times it was mesmerising, and that can only get better as they play together. And some guy called Nick Gussett, don't know, said, were you surprised to see Eze and Jeff on the pitch at the same time? And I've got to say, I was, but DR called it in terms of the next sub. He suggested Townsend would go off, which I agreed with, but I thought we'd shift Ayew out to the right and stick Batshuayi on up top. But he was right. We moved Eze out to the right and put Jeff on the left. And I suppose that gives, it puts Andros under a bit of pressure to maintain form, doesn't it? Because Roy now knows he can get Eze right-hand side and get Super Jeff back in. So, There we go.
Can't argue with that.
No, exactly. But we bring up Eze in this section because I think I'm going to say it now. He was for me man of the match. Anyone else got another player they would pick for man of the match?
He was for me as well by a country mile, and I'm really impressed with his temperament in the way he talks, in the fact that he clearly loves his football. He seems like he's good. If he stays at Palace, he seems like he's going to be an absolute legend. And I don't want to pile loads of stuff on him before he's done anything, but everything about him, you can answering Johnny Thatcher's questions about Wilf and as I think we've mentioned it before, Wilf clearly trusts him in a way that he probably doesn't trust any other player. I don't think there's any limit to how much this man can help our side. And hopefully this is the first game that he starts, and he stays in the starting. I mean, I want to see Townsend in there as well, but if they can somehow even fit Schlupp in as well, he's got to stay in the side. It was incredible, imperious, and I look up what he got and who scored, but it wasn't enough. He only got
9.3, was it? 9 point something?
Well, should have been 11.
9.13. There you go.
Yeah.
I'll do the devil's advocate, because both of you have gone for Eze, and had I been asked before Mike, I probably said the same. But I thought Wilf was fantastic. I mean, it's almost boring saying, Wilf was man of the match, but you look, I know it wasn't a direct assist, but you look at the pass for Van Aanholt's OG. You look at the work he did for the RU goal. He was everywhere, all over that pitch, and drawing the fouls, and he was. I think the Wolves game wasn't great for Wilf, and his temperament wasn't. We all know he had 1 in 8 games. Wilf loses his head, and was arguably lucky to potentially be on the pitch in that Wolves game. But I thought yesterday he was, short of scoring, I thought Wilf was almost perfect. So whilst it almost doesn't need saying week on week, I'll be the one to say that Wilf was absolutely amazing yesterday.
Really glad you brought that up, because DR and I were talking about it during the game, because DR was talking about how quiet Wilf was, and to a degree I understood why he was saying that, but I think at times we've got to get used to Wilf playing a slightly different way. Because when you think about Wilf, so if you're thinking about in your head what you picture when you talk about Wilf having a great game, you're thinking about him beating 2 people, drilling the ball into the top corner, that kind of stuff. You're thinking about that Wilf. And you're not always thinking about Zaha picking up space, moving defenders around, taking 2 people over the other side of the pitch so his colleagues got some space to run into, finding passes from out of nowhere, the vision to switch play when it needs to be switched, all that kind of stuff that he was doing in the game. Because it's almost not what you expect to see Wilf doing, you can miss it. And I 100% agree. I thought he was exceptional. In terms of an all-round team performance, it's hard to know without him. The only thing he could add is what we talked about, the beat 2 players and drill it into the corner, That's the only thing he could possibly add to that performance.
But I mean, arguably he did do that for IU's goal. It's just that the Leeds defending was so non-existent that he managed to go through him in about a third of a second.
Absolutely right. We've got to talk a little bit about Gyro really quickly as well. Every game you see him play just looks better and better. It's just effortless for him. And to me, he's gone from, will he get any game time pre-season to first choice central midfielder now. Any arguments there?
Nope.
Not one.
No, it seems to, for me, it's something my dad mentioned yesterday after watching the game. He's kind of, I think when we had Loftus-Cheek on loan, there was a very distinct, and I hate to refer to that fucking awful game at Bristol City away in the cup, but there was, talking of Jekyll and Hyde, there was 2 very different Loftus-Cheeks in his loan spell at Palace. There was before the injury, and then there was the last 10 games where he came in and really ran the show. And Riedewald seems to have adopted that role, albeit sort of 15, 20 yards deeper. He he seems, he gets his head up. Not quite. I think Eze's come in and stolen the drop in the shoulder glory, but Riedewald can beat a man and can glide past the player, puts a shift in terms of his defensive responsibilities, and just looks like he's been playing in the middle of the park for the last sort of 3 seasons. All of a sudden he's come out of nowhere and he's this amazing central midfielder, and I love MacArthur. I still got a lot of time for Luca, but Riedewald has come in and he's got this other dimension that neither of those players have.
Yeah.
And Riedewald and MacArthur yesterday were sort of a really good combination. MacArthur's this little busybody that does a little bit of everything, and gives he runs himself into the ground, and almost has to be sort of carried off the pitch at the end. But Riedewald does something similar. It could be an age difference, but Riedewald seems to do similar stuff, but almost at half the pace, but with just real aplomb. And I really hope that, and it's not a slight on Luca. I was going to say it's not a slight on McCarthy, but it is. I'm not a massive McCarthy fan, but Riedewald has really grabbed that position, and long may it continue, because he can play, he can defend, and he sees the game, and fair play to him. Like, he's waited a long time, and it doesn't seem to have hung over him in terms of got him down. He's got this opportunity and he's taken it. And week on week, Wolves wasn't a great game for him, but it wasn't great for anybody. He really ran that game yesterday in the middle of the park, and him and MacArthur is really exciting.
So in conclusion, Gyro, best Dutch person since Van Basten.
There you go. I just hope the 3-year wait hasn't meant that he will run down his contract. That's my fear at the moment. That perhaps he isn't quite as happy about that situation as he's let on. But I mean, certainly the club or staff are talking about him earning that right, adding all sorts of things to his game, and I think it's different. He has to play differently depending on who he's got next to him. I think you're quite right with MacArthur doing all the little bits here and there. He can be a bit more, he can sit a little bit deeper, do a bit more screening, and let MacArthur do kind of the box-to-box stuff. And he can kind of do the playmaker type role. But I think with Luca alongside him, obviously Luca's going to sit there and do that screening, and it becomes down to Gyro to do the box-to-box stuff, which is why we saw him get forward and get that goal against Fulham. So interesting that you're right. He has all of that in his locker, and let's just hope he stays with us. A quick couple of words. Scott Dan keeping his place alongside Kouyaté. I don't think either of those two we'd have thought would be our first choice centre-back pairing, but you'd argue against dropping either at the moment. Dan looks like he's a man reborn, and of course he's a year younger than Cahill, which is easy to forget. And Kouyaté, you just can't drop him at the moment. So good competition for places there. So there we are. So I'm just
reading the show doc here. The last thing you put underneath that is just mum ?
Yeah,
I think you mean man of the match, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not against finding out what anybody's mum thought of the game. And if you want to send in your mum's views for next week, please do. You can email us hi@backofthenest, or you can find us on any social media channel by searching for the words Back of the Nest.
Any book recommendations from your mothers?
yeah. Just let us know. Just careful with the books. Anyway, just a couple of 4-word reviews for you to give you a little flavour of what we received. So Leif Anderson's forehead, great name. Leeds got Roybald. Beer was the 4th word. Good. I mean, if you need a 4th word, why not use beer? Neil Koska's gone with there were actual shots. Nick Sadler's gone with play as every game. Mike Deacon has gone with finally winning with style. Ben has gone with what did I witness, which is kind of where I landed. Mark Drew has gone with didn't see that coming. And who moved the screen deliberately so I couldn't read the last one? That was weird, wasn't it? Oh, it says Yeah.
It says give Roy some credit from Kevin.
It does say give Roy. There's another one that's been added at the end there. I don't know who. Do you want to read that one out, Albert?
Oh, I've not got the app in front of me, to be honest.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. Probably won't read that one out. But Kevin's give Roy some credit. Hopefully, those of you that have occasionally had a little bit of a pop at the show in the past about not giving Roy enough credit, I hope we gave him a lot of credit, right? In the show, it was all lots of Roy credit.
Definitely. Well done, Roy.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, a final well done, Roy, for me as well there as well. So good stuff. Mike's just keeping his thoughts to himself on that.
I mean, I had this discussion yesterday with people, and they said you can't say that you're neither Roy in or out. And I was like, well, I can and I am, so fuck off.
But oh dear. No, let's not get into it. We really haven't got time.
Let's not.
So obviously the next game, we've got an international break, which we'll obviously be taking an international break as well. Some of our team. Zaire. Is that still a country? Oh dear. DR's away representing Turkey as well. So we need to take a little bit of a break. But it'll be Burnley when we come back. But rather than talk too much about Burnley, and obviously at some point, Albert, you and the preview team will be getting into that. But the next three games we've got are Burnley, Newcastle, and West Brom. So on paper, playing like we just did against Leeds, 9 points, right? That would be 22 points after 11 games. So what I'm really getting at there is if we deliver what we're capable of delivering, we can really set the tone for what this season will be. So my gut feeling says if we actually play like we can do, we back the players to attack, we back the players, to do what they did against Leeds, defend when you need to defend, attack when you need to attack, be confident on the ball, we can pick up those 9 points. And that, to me, points the way to the fabled top 10 finish. If we let ourselves down, then I think we can't expect much more than our usual 12 to 14. So I actually think this early on, it's actually a pivotal 3 games for us. Thoughts, Albert?
Gone big. I wasn't expecting so much weight this early in the season, but when you put it like that, I mean, I'm like yesterday during the perfectly legal stream that I was watching, and that's Palace in 7th. And we did an American accent, which would have given away the fact it wasn't a perfect legal stream. It's like, oh, Christ, we're 7th. Like, how are we doing that? But the table doesn't lie, and yeah, those are 3 fairly favourable fixtures on paper. Football's not played on paper.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd certainly like to see the same team start. There's no reason why it can't. It worked yesterday. Burnley are having a rotten time of it. So let's try and put 4 past them as well, please.
Absolutely. Flip side, Mike. No wins for Burnley yet. No wins for West Brom yet. What's the Palace thing to do in those circumstances?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, my gut reaction is that those teams, especially West Brom, will play much more in a way that we're going to find incredibly difficult. They've had 3 draws. Spurs only narrowly beat them with their customary 89th minute Harry Kane goal. They felt that pain that we felt 18 times before. I think they're going to be very hard teams to beat. Newcastle, we have a checkered history with results. I'd be happy with sort of 4 or 6 points from those 3 games, really. If we beat Burnley and West Brom, we're already 10 points above the drop zone. Those 2 will be in big trouble and will be well on the way to being safe, I think, because I can't see them 2 right now getting more than about 25 points apiece. But
I'm not thinking about safety, mate. What's the point in that? Especially there's a gap opening up. Look at the bottom of the table, Brighton downwards. They're the ones in trouble. So it's it's not too early. 8 games in to look at the table. It's fine. That's exactly where it's going. But yeah, I genuinely, if we don't get 9 points out of the next 3, I'm going back on the Roy out bandwagon. I'm getting T-shirts made. Some kind of red cap with white writing on it. Anyway, I'll shut the hell up now. So that's more than enough. So thank you, obviously, for listening /watching. Special thanks to all of you who got in touch We read everything that you sent us. There was tons of it, but it did help shape the show, whether your comment was read out or not. Obviously, thank you very much to Mike and to Albert. Cheers, gents. Hugely appreciate your time and effort. And thank you to Mikey for producing as well. So make sure you've subscribed to the podcast to get the next preview show in a week and a bit. Make sure you also... I can't wait. It's my highlight of the week.
It's not mine.
Anyway, like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, if you could, as well.
Is that .com?
YouTube.com. Yes, YouTube.
Full stop, .com.
I think you have to put the http://www.youtube.com on the end of it.
Just to be thorough.
I mean, otherwise, who knows what will happen. But yeah, if you do all of that, what I just said there, you'll be able to keep up to date with all of our content, as well as by searching all social media platforms for Back of the Nest. So, still wondering if we've got a TikTok. I swear Mikey signed up for TikTok. Either of you two fancy a bit of TikToking?
No, I'm good.
I don't know what it is.
No, well, I like to keep it that way as well. I'm not entirely sure. Still, until next time, come on, you Palace.